Do you recognise this report? Do you think that this is true?
I think a lot of the big problems in the Met with supervision. But I've got to echo the words of this Home Secretary that the vast majority of officers will be decent, they'll be facing knives and all sorts of wickedness today, bravely defending the public. What's failing here is leadership. What struck me in the Met is the amount of officers a sergeant would manage went from about 5, it's now 10 and could be 12 and 15. How can you manage that? At the same time, of course, there's always 4 assistant commissioners. They never got rid of assistant commissioners, they got rid of sergeants and inspectors. They've recruited the wrong people. They used to recruit lots and lots of armed forces. That hasn't happened as well. So they say it's a disciplined service. It isn't disciplined at all. The people it's a group of ex-students loosely managing a number of ex-students. But the thing is with me, is that these wicked individuals like Cousins, who I would gladly hang, Carrick, who should rot in jail. If we look at the NHS, for example, every day there's a doctor struck off for some wickedness. We're told there's doctors who've been molesting cancer child patients, a doctor who killed 250 people, a nurse on trial for killing 7 babies. We don't hold the NHS to account, and it's not fair in a way. And the report goes on about, that in the Met there's 71% of police officers are male. Well, 89% of nurses are female, but I don't care, do you? All I care about, if I go to hospital, I go to the police, I get a good service, whether I'm gay or straight, white or black. And I think that what's happened is the police has gone more and more woke, but the more woke it goes, the worse it gets. It's criticised for being misogynistic, it's criticised for being anti-gay, and all this seems to have happened on the watch of the first lesbian commissioner. So it seems like the more woke you go, literally, the police has gone broke.
Well, talk to me about solutions, then. We've identified a lot of the problems. The problems are there for all to read. They do sound shocking on paper.
Absolutely.
I, for what it's worth, absolutely take your point about the idea that there are other institutions like the NHS where people do horrendous things and no one's out in the streets going defund the NHS and all of this stuff. But there are calls today to break up or disband the Met. What would that look like?
Well, I can't say it can be done geographically. You could take away national squads, so there's like the anti-terrorist squad has a national responsibility. The parliamentary protection squad has a national responsibility. So you could say, the Commissioner of the Police has got, Sir Mark Rowley's got such a job on with all the crime occurring in London, well, let's give them to a different agency. Somebody else can manage those centralised squads, so that's like 2, 3, 4, 5 different things he doesn't have to worry about. And then he can focus on crime, because I think most people in London, what they're concerned about is that, 1 in 20 burglaries is solved.
Yeah.
1 in 20 robberies. It isn't good enough. And
well, the rape charges and conviction rates and things like that, I mean, especially for women at the minute in the capital city, are not good enough.
It's absolutely... It makes people afraid. And what people want from the police service... I reiterate this time and time again. I don't care. The vast majority of the public don't care. The colour of the officer who comes to see you, the sexuality of the officer who comes to see you, the sex of the officer. What they're getting, though, is a bad service. There's all sorts of reasons for that. Bad funding, 20% less on the budget. The police have to deal with sweep up all the mental health issues that they have to deal with. And also, they're not training, they're not picking the right people.
Now, why does this matter? Why should this matter? We have... probably most of our viewers and listeners will be outside London, OK? Why should they care about this?
Because the Met is the biggest police force in the country. It's 5 times bigger than the next one down, Greater Manchester Police. And so it influences national policy, or whether people like that or not, it really does influence national policy. And what happens in the Met often, what is going on throughout the country. But what we see, if we look for good examples of policing, if you look in Greater Manchester Police, simple things like the sergeant saying, clean your shoes, put your shirt on, get a grip, having proper supervision means that, it sounds silly, doesn't it, clean your shoes and put your shirt on properly, but it means the public get a better service, there's focus. But the trouble is the Met, it's been focusing for so long, painting rainbows, dancing the Macarena, whatever else. Focus on crime. You'll never please the politically correct people. The more you go politically correct, the more they want.
I get that. It is certainly one of the solutions that people were saying, well, if it is institutionally misogynistic, homophobic, sexist, etc., you name it, it's like playing bingo, isn't it, with those things? You name it, the Met allegedly is it. People will be saying one of the ways to combat that is to do educational classes on things that you might class as being woke. You don't think there's any merit in that?
I don't think there's any merit at all. What they need to do is vet people as they join, train them properly. At the moment, instead of going to an organised training school like I went to, with drill sergeants marching around with instructors watching you best part of 18 hours of the day, you could pick out odd people, the weird people who need looking into. At the moment, the vetting is done online. You don't sit face to face.
Well, that's ridiculous, isn't it?
You know, when I was joined, I was a soldier. A RUC sergeant came to visit me in the barracks. Otherwise, he would have visited my family at home. All those like old ideas, which are seen as stupid, really do work because you see the person in the...
Well, and the other thing I think you mentioned there, we're going to have to leave it there, but the other thing you mentioned there is, you know, we should not be doing law and order on the cheap. You can't do law and order on the cheap, and there's no way around it. You know, the fact is that people might say, oh, defund the police. I mean, a lot of people would say it needs more funding. That's part of the point.